Now to China, where a court has sentenced property tycoon Hui Ka Yan to life in prison for financial crimes linked to the collapse of his Evergrande real estate group. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges linked to his time at the head of the property giant, including financial fraud and misuse of funds. A court in Shenzhen also ordered that all of the former billionaire's assets be confiscated.
Hui Ka Yan, the founder of the property giant Evergrande, has been sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of multiple offences, including fundraising fraud, inflating company assets and bribery. The ruling by the court in Shenzhen, which was broadcast on state TV, also ordered the confiscation of all his personal assets. The verdict marks a dramatic fall from grace for a man who once ranked as Asia's richest man, according to Forbes. At the height of Evergrande's success, Hui employed around 200,000 people, generated more than €100 billion in annual sales, and had property projects in more than 280 Chinese cities. It even owned a professional football club. But Evergrande's spectacular rise was built on borrowed money. During China's property boom, the company took on huge debts to finance new developments, betting the demand for housing would keep rising. Instead, the market turned, and oversupply of housing has led to ghost towns and empty developments in many places in China. Evergrande eventually defaulted in 2021, with debts estimated at around €255 billion. Its collapse left more than 1.5 million homebuyers who already deposited money facing unfinished homes, sparking anger across the country. The court has also fined companies formerly controlled by Hui a total of around €2 billion. But the problems facing China's property market are far from over. Last year, new home sales fell to their lowest level since 2014, according to official figures. Beijing has introduced a series of measures aimed at stabilising the market and supporting struggling developers. But so far, there is little sign of an end to the property crisis.
Let's get more on this from DW China analyst Clifford Coonan. Welcome, Cliff. It's hard to overestimate the importance of this company to China and the impact that its collapse had on massive sections of society there.
That's absolutely true. The Evergrande is the biggest piece in an enormous puzzle. The Chinese real estate market is probably the most important economic sector in the world, and the repercussions are spreading all over the world. I mean, we're feeling it here in Europe because it's led to an economic slowdown in China, which means China is exporting all this stuff, which is putting all this pressure on European industry. So the repercussions are enormous, not just in China, but within China itself, it's very, very serious. And China's struggled to try and replace the growth that comes from the property market. Right,
because you take that massive sector suddenly out and you've got nothing to put in its place.
That's right. It's not like people are shopping or anything like that. And that also ties in, I mean, there's an impact on ordinary people as well, which was mentioned in the report, how they didn't have, people whose homes, they've invested all their money. I mean, there's very few options for saving money in China, for example, and property was always the thing that people did. And suddenly there's no property to buy, or because a building has stopped or your building is half finished, and it's caused massive hardship. So it's caused incredible repercussions within society. And I think that's a very important factor in why we had the decision today.
Right, and Chinese authorities clearly intend to make an example of him. What does this tell us about China and the rule of law?
Well, I think, the charges against him, it shows that they're trying to make an example of him, as you say. It's clearly about hubris to a certain extent because there's no real bankruptcy laws in China. A lot of this legislation isn't there. This is ultimately a political decision. It's about showing that they want to, that this mistake was made and that someone has to be the fall guy for it. For years and years and years, the Communist Party was telling the property companies to spend, to build and to borrow money and to keep the economy growing, which isn't a sustainable model. So this is, in a way, a repercussion of that. But the party can't take the blame for that, so it's always going to be the individuals themselves in the property market.
OK, so two elements to that. One, the political decision that property is everything, but those weren't the charges he faced. This sounds like they just did him worse for trying to. It sounds like for his efforts to cover up what went wrong within the company.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, what Evergrande did wasn't unusual, within the property sector generally. I mean, he was charged with embezzlement, corporate bribery, concealing debt. We don't know the details of anything. I mean, these are just what was released. They could kind of say anything they want in a way, because there was clearly excesses there. But a lot of it was just buying government land near the cities, building as fast as you can, as quickly as you can to create value, and basically the pace was so fast that oversight was missing. And there wasn't really oversight anyway to begin with. So a lot of this is sort of going backwards, looking at how the property collapse happened. So I think in some ways the charges are probably, I'm sure you'll definitely find cases of it, but I think the bigger picture is much more that this is about punishing failure.
Tell us about this man, because he had quite a background, doesn't he? Hui Ka Yan.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. I mean, it's a very much a sort of rags to riches and now to jail story. He grew up very poor. His mother died when he was 8 of sepsis, and then he worked as a security guard. He worked in factories, and eventually he got into local government or into local state-owned enterprises, and then ascended the ladder within the party and set up his company. And personally, he's clearly very charismatic and very powerful. He's very good at working the Chinese system, because you can't get this massive system, 1.4 billion people with 100 and whatever million Communist Party members. You have to be good at playing the system. So he's clearly a capable person. He was actually, it was interesting. He was a neighbour of ours in. When I lived in China for...
You moved in some elevated circles.
Well, it was interesting because we lived in a diplomatic compound, and ordinarily Chinese people are not allowed to live in the diplomatic compound, but he had connections, so he got in there. And one day we were in the playground with the kids, and a group of building workers came in and looking for him because they hadn't been paid. And they just basically knew that he lived in the compound, and they went after him, So he was kind of and that's how, it just shows how kind of unstable the situation was in a way that, even though it was these massive projects, it still came down to trying to pay people as you went, or not paying people for weeks so you could borrow more money. And that was just a feature of the whole Chinese property market. And then it culminated this. And then, of course, the soldiers came in and got the builders out.
We have this massive company, things that the property market starts to cool down. But there was a period in there where the Chinese government actually started to pay more attention to what was going on, and that seems to have accelerated the collapse.
Yeah, I mean, certainly towards the beginning of this decade, there was a lot of, the excesses were getting too much. I mean, the football team, we saw the pictures there, Phil Scolari, the former Brazil coach, and Shanghai Evergrande winning every year, and it coincides with other things. There was also Jack Ma, who was also a very famous tycoon, who was also, there was a clampdown against the tech sector. So you had that too. And it was also because he flew a little bit too close to the sun. And he made a speech criticizing the party. And that led to him losing his business effect. He disappeared. Jack Ma lost his business, and he disappeared for in a certain period. And that was also a sign of the Communist Party showing who's boss, for one thing. And with this is also to show that the party is in political control. So it's going to clamp down on the property sector. I mean, they're not going to try and revive the property sector. This is all about showing who's boss as well. That's a big factor. So you have these various elements at work.
And meanwhile, just in a few seconds, the Chinese property sector still in peril.
Yeah, and we're still feeling the effects of it, even 6 to 7 years later.
OK, thanks for talking us through that, Cliff. DW China analyst, Clifford Coonan.